Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and it's Women's History Month, and I'm here today to talk to you about Hetty Feather Season 3. So Season 3 is quite unique. It is the beginning of the end for all of our characters, as at the end of this season, the entire cast gets gutted and only 3 of them remain for the remainder of the series. Well, 2.5 really. Yes, the foundlings are about to turn 14 years old, which means they're about to leave the foundling hospital and go off into the world. Some will join the military, the boys. As for the ladies, they will be maids. This was quite a very sad season in the sense that the cast that everybody got to know and, get used to and admire is now gonna be gone and replaced with a completely different cast. Because, of course, Hetty Feather herself will go into servitude and she will have to work for somebody's house. It was a very sad transition, but the new cast is very enjoyable, so I do like them. But it's just sad we ain't gonna see everyone else again. We're not gonna see the lads, we're not gonna see Harriet, Mr. Cranborn, and the 2 nurses. They're all gonna be gone by at least the 8th episode is when they all leave. And you hate doing that. I know it had been hard for the production staff because you don't want to get rid of your stars and everything, but sadly it must happen, similar to how the books happen and stuff. Now, of course, this does deviate from that of the books. They still insert 2 characters from the book, Mrs. Smith and Sissy. God, I hate saying that name because it sounds like the old LGBT slur. But that's her name, S-I-S-S-Y. They're here very brief and their roles are kind of similar, kind of altered and stuff from that of the book. And, one thing that really took me by surprise in this season was what happened to the big war between Matron and Hetty. Because of the simple fact, season 2 was so dramatic and it was building up to something fierce. But then they kind of just took a huge step back and all let's water down this season. Let's calm things down. I think because season 2 was way too dramatic for that of a kid/teen show. Because you had a teen die. You had other ones working in a factory that had no business working there, sold into basically slavery. Then you had the whole Matron and Hetty just going at it, and Matron always throwing her in the trench and all this other stuff. And it was probably a bit too much. So all right, let's calm this down. In fact, it's so calmed down that Matron and Hetty barely interact this entire season. For the first half, they pretty much don't even interact with each other. They don't start interacting towards the end, but it's very minimum, very brief, which is very odd because those 2 are the 2 main stars that are enemies and everything, So it was quite odd to see that. And in fact, sometimes it feels like Hetty is barely in this season. It feels more about Matron than it does about Hetty, which is funny because it's called Hetty Feather. And they still deviate from the source material where Hetty wants to become a writer. But we don't really see her writing all that much this season. But she still talks about how she wants to be a writer. Another thing that's pretty absent is her whole brotherly love for Gideon. Gideon is actually barely in this season. He barely has anything to do. And Hetty ain't even thinking about him. Hetty hasn't thought about him since season 1, which is crazy because that's supposed to be part of what the premise of this show was supposed to be about. Hetty fighting with Matron, Hetty wanting to find out who her mother is, and Hetty wanting to be near her brother. Now, of course, in the book, she only got to see him from a distance. And she never really got to interact with him in the books, only hearing stories and stuff. I get that. But why are you gonna make still Matthias the main boy of the show, and he has more to do and say than that of Gideon? I really don't like that and everything. Sorry about that, my camera died. I like Matthias and all, but you know, wouldn't it have been more prudent to have Gideon be like the main boy and stuff like that? But you know, it is what it is. Sheila also goes back to her bad ways. She's back to snitching left and right. But Sheila goes through that of a metamorphosis in this season. And she does things, once again, that are very shocking. Not as shocking as what she did last season that caused everybody to hate her. But like, because what she did was despicable, getting rid of Ida. And so, like, Hetty still has obstacles ahead of her, but not as big as before. But, of course, towards the end, she just wants to take down Matron and stuff. But, you know, the season isn't bad by no means. It's just, I guess, after all the stuff that happened last season, they're kind of like, yo, we need to, like, dial it down. Just a scotch and everything, because we don't want to lose our viewers and everything. And then of course this will lead into season 4, and then that dreadful season 5. Oh god, I don't even think I'm gonna rewatch season 5 and talk about it. I hate that season so much. It'll probably take me a long time to rewatch it and stuff. I'll just skip over that at some point, because like season 6, the series finale, the last season and everything, I've already talked about the Christmas special episode that happens between 5 and 6, and season 6 is only like 3 episodes of all things. I truly believe that season 5 was just so dreadful and unbearable to watch, that like that and all the changes to the source material, because after season 3 and once you get into season 4, they're just making up their own stuff now. And season 4 is juicy. I do like season 4, but that season 5, man, I'm telling you. So, and it took a long time for season 6 to be renewed, and the fact that it only got 3 episodes, and it wasn't all that fulfilling, because it's kind of like, that's what you're gonna do? Like, that's what you're gonna do and everything? We only got 3 episodes left, and this is how Hetty Feather's journey is gonna end, and I don't get it. You know, it's just kind of like, they just lost their creativity and everything, because they just wanted to keep punishing Hetty in every season and stuff. She always has to have an enemy at some point. Now, if this show was really, if the creatives were really smart, what they should have done is that once we say goodbye to our foundlings, there should have been spin-off seasons. There should have been a Matthias and Harriet series, and there should have been one with the lads as they go off into the army. But the lads are literally just like, you know, technically they are main characters, but they don't never really feel like it in the show. They feel more like background characters, and they don't even feel like recurring characters. They just feel like background characters, which was always a shame, because I always wanted to know more about them and see them do more than just stop Vince or like, you know, try to help Hetty out and everything. And so I just wish they would have had more creativity when they created those characters. But basically it's like this. I'll start with, when I go into character profiles, I'll start with the lads first. Why not? So the lads, basically when it comes to Ned, he no longer wants to be a newspaper printing type person. Now he wants to be a detective, and he does his detective skills twice in this season. So that's nice to give him 2 tiny little story arcs. And one of them is why people are getting sick at the school or at the hospital. It's only the kids, because the matron decided to save some money, because she's still in it this season, and get like flour that's not very good. And the flour has been tainted by like gangs and stuff like that out in the streets. because it's a whole lot cheaper. She got it from like a really shady person. So he deduced that, it's the flour making people sick. And this ruins Matron's chances of going to America when this one American man wanted her to be the matron at like a type of foundling hospital in America. Even though I don't believe we had him, we just had orphanages and stuff. But he wanted her to be like the matron. And so when kids start throwing up left and right, he realizes that she's not suitable for the job. And then he has another detective episode when a famous painting is stolen. Of course, Hetty's the one who stole it because she was trying to play Cupid and everything again. And so, like, I'll get into that a little bit later. And so he believed that this former military man who came there to teach them stuff stole the painting, but he did not. Now we get into Walter because the painting revolves around him. Walter meets his father, his biological father, for the first time. It's the military man who got accused of stealing. See, the military man has PTSD because shrapnel hit him on the side of the head and nearly killed him. So when he hears a big bang, his hand trembles and stuff. And when this whole episode was not written very well, with the whole revelation that he is Walter's father. It's just kind of is there, and it's just kind of shoved in with no thought. And because he literally is drilling them, but then he goes to Walter. Somehow he knows who Walter is, and he knows, because here's the thing. Walter's not even his real name. I've told you before, when these kids are taken in as infants, they are given new Christian names and stuff. And Walter was his new name. So what his original name was, I have no idea. How his father would even know that Walter is his fake name is never explained. But anyways, he literally just goes up to him, is all like, Walter, I'm your father. And Walter's like, no, I have no father. I was little. And then he runs off. Now, here's the crazy thing about all this. Walter had a foundling father. Not a foundling, but a borrowed father. That's basically the person who kind of adopts you, kind of doesn't. And his dad, his fake dad, was in the military. And remember in season 1, he wanted to go to Africa to find him because he was stationed there in the military. But he decided not to go because he had to help the lads out. And so with that, now, and I guess the writers are like, hey, remember that storyline? Let's do that again, but this time make his biological father a military guy. So they did that, and it turns out his mom died in childbirth, which made him feel terrible. Like, wow, I killed my mom and everything. And so, other than that, he doesn't ask to live with his father. He barely hugs his father. He assumes his father's a thief and everything. It's a storyline that just isn't handled very well, like it was before with the whole Emily thing, or when Hetty found her mother out. It's just kind of there. And not only that, but only some of the kids know. And none of the adults know. So Matron isn't trying to kick him out like she did Ida and stuff. And it just was not handled very well. And they gave him that story arc because they had nothing else for Walter in the series and stuff. Now the lads, Ned and that Walter, they actually get to work for the colonel or the general dude who's always there at the foundling hospital. They're gonna work close with him so that those two will never be separated and stuff. So that's nice to get to have their happy ending and still be together. Elizabeth is the last remaining friend that of Sheila has. And all throughout this season, in the beginning, Sheila was treating her like crap, even trying to ruin her possibilities of getting a good job and everything, and talking down to her, being all like, I'm gonna work in the kitchen when I graduate and everything. And then just didn't want to be her friend no more. So Elizabeth literally asked Hetty, how are you doing, after Hetty ran away. Hetty wants nothing to do with her because she hates her and stuff. So then it's when Sheila's all like, I'll be your friend again and stuff. And then she's all like, maybe you can work in the kitchen with me. And so like it turns out that this wealthy family came with a little girl and she needs somebody to babysit her. They picked Elizabeth. But Sheila does not want Elizabeth to go. Because she's gonna get to live in a fancy house and all this, and she's gonna stay at the Foundling Hospital. So they say their sad goodbyes and everything, and that's the end of Elizabeth. She has no real role in this show. She really didn't have no purpose. But at least the actress got to be in Les Miserables, and I believe she was nominated for like a bunch of stuff, I believe. Either that or the movie did. Blanche. They pretty much had nothing for Blanche this season whatsoever, to the point where they got rid of her in 2 episodes. Pretty much her entire story arc was over with in season 2. She's no longer blackmailing Matron and all this other stuff, and she's just kind of there. And I mean literally just there. And so by like the 2nd episode, this one girl whose name escapes me right now. I think it might be Grace. I think that's the girl's name or something like that. It's a girl off the streets who runs with a gang of pickpocketers and stuff. And the gang, part of the gang leader, the second in command, is a friend of Matron, and the other one is this man we keep hearing about but never get to see. And so she's all like, Blanche, come run away with me. I stole a bunch of stuff and we can fence and live together and blah, 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 blah. So Blanche hides her out, and with the help of Hetty's new friend, Mrs. Smith, she put that the girl, it's a girl named Jess, I think. Jessie, that's it. Jessie, that's it. So they put Jessie in like this home for young girls who've been like abused and stuff, and to take care of them, teach them like manners and schoolwork and give them a good job and all this other crap. So she's gonna be there, and so they decided to put Blanche in this really fancy house where she can be like a maid, which is kind of funny because Blanche never does any servant work, and she has a really rotten attitude. But like, and that job was supposed to be for Hetty, so Hetty can see Ida and everything. So Blanche is just gone, and Blanche tells Hetty, you know, that book that Jessie stole and everything is a book that Matron wants because it can literally put her in jail. Remember when I said Matron used to sell kids to factories and get money off and stuff like that? That book has like all the records and how much money, you know, they got and all this other stuff. So the book becomes a major plot device in this season. Vince and Judd are pretty much the same, but Judd's a whole lot nicer this season. And he even helps Hetty, and he even helps to bust that of the Matron. Pretty much Vince is still the exact same way he is, like always stealing stuff like that. When he finds out that like nurse, oh, what's her name? Win something. The ooh, what is it? Was Waterson? No, Westerson. When he finds out she's dating somebody, which is against rule policy, you're not supposed to date nobody or be married and work there, he steals a silver pen from her and he starts blackmailing her. He prevents Hetty from seeing her mother, but he had no idea she was supposed to see her. He just wanted to play a game of dominoes with her because he started to have a crush on her. Other than that, he is exactly just a scummy little person, and called like Walter's father a coward because his hands were trembling and stuff. Don't worry, he's gonna get his comeuppance in the next season. But what's really odd is that when all the boys decide to leave, he joins their group for some reason in a last handshake hurrah and talking about how they're brothers, which is odd because him and Judd literally hates the lads and everything, and all they ever do is fight. So to make them have that brotherly bond at the end was so forced on the writing. Now he treats Judd like crap because it turns out Judd is only 13 and he can't go into the military. Man, they used to make the military go at age 14. And so he starts treating him like crap and everything. That's when Judd just completely turns on him. But they even joined them for like a last hurrah picnic that the group has in their little club meeting thing that they have in the attic. But him and Judd make up and give each other a brotherly hug embrace as they're about to leave. because he feels terrible he's not going to get to go with his best friend and stuff. But don't you worry, he's going to get his comeuppance for calling that one military dude a coward, because he didn't leave the military force. He had no choice because he got hurt and stuff. As for the two nurses, they're pretty much exactly the same, but Miss McAfield is no longer the comedic relief. She's just kind of there. She's just in the middle. She's not as mean as she used to be, and she's just more pleasant to be around. And when she finds out the matron wants to go to America, she wants to go with her. But the matron's about to leave without her, so she ratted her out. As for Mrs. Nurse Westerson or Waterson, I can't remember her name. She pretty much just falls in love with the constable. He's constantly here this season, investigating this and investigating that. McAfield had a crush on him, but he wants the other nurse instead. And she actually, even though she's hurt, she's not jealous, and she doesn't ruin things for the other nurse, especially when she sees them kiss and everything. And so, like, she's in love with him, but she can't do nothing about that because she can't date him, so she breaks up with him. When she breaks up with him, this is when she turns grouchy, and this is when Hetty tries to play Cupid by stealing the picture so the constable will come and have to investigate it. And so, while, like, he tells her, you know, he wants to marry her and all this and that, she tells him, you know, she can't. But then they go and hide because they're about to get caught. Then they hear the boys talk about how, like, Matthias loves, like, you know, Harriet and all that. And when he proposes to her, she says yes. But then she tells him once again she can't be with him until Cranborn tells her, look, I'm going to change the rules so y'all can date. They eventually get married, and she changes her last name off screen and stuff. So it's nice that she got to have a nice, happy ending, because I remember in season 1, she needed that job so that, like, you know, she could take care of her ill father. Cranborn, he's so thrilled to have a clipboard. Maybe they were invented around that time and they were very rare to have, but he's very happy to have it. He doesn't have much of a storyline whatsoever this season. Like I'm saying, a lot of people don't. It's mostly about matron and stuff. And so, and a little bit about Hetty. So, like, he's still there doing the authoritative type thing, but he's doing more of it this season, which is really good. And he's even, like, you know, stepping up to matron at times. He still kind of likes her a little bit, but towards the end, when she starts to get busted, he realizes that she is a terrible, horrible person. Mrs. Sarah Smith is from the book. She's the new governess at the Foundling Hospital. And she takes a liking to Hetty when she starts hearing about, like, Ida and all this other stuff. She even arranges to have Ida sneak into the Foundling Hospital and meet Hetty. Hetty has no idea, and the cook is willing to help. But Hetty is preoccupied because Vince is playing, like, dominoes with her. Until Hetty figures it out and she goes to see, like, her mother. And so they get to spend some time together because Hetty ran off in the first episode to try to be with her. But somehow Matron figures something out and realizes something is just, like, fishy, like her spider sense were tingling. So Mrs. Smith tried to stop the matron, but her and the matron do not get along because she doesn't want none of the kids punished and all this other stuff. And she's always looking after Hetty. So she tells matron, look, I'll resign if you don't punish her and let her spend a little bit of time with her mom. And so because of that, we no longer see Mrs. Smith. Now, Mrs. Smith has a similar role in the book, but then she writes a book called, like, something for posies, which is, like, you know, a story that both Hetty and Sissy told her in the books when they had their adventures and stuff. Gideon is barely in the show. When I mean he's barely in the show, I literally mean he is barely in the show. He's there and he just doesn't do much in the first half and the second half. Well, towards the end of the first half, he still can't get down the military stuff. and he can't put the cannon together, he can't march, he can't do nothing. But he knows he's gonna have to go into service, but he's really pathetic at it. So at some point in time, this new family called the Calendars come and they need a new garden boy. So Mr. Cranborn, realizing that Gideon is never gonna make it in, like, service, he decides to let Gideon be like a garden boy. And so this is where we see Gideon now towards the end of the second half, and he really still doesn't do much. Like, he spies on the daughter of the Calendars and stuff, but doesn't really say anything, and he helps Hetty out and rescue her, but that's really about it. He doesn't really get along with Jack, the other garden boy, who's kind of like his boss, but by the next season they'll become best friends, and he forgets all about Matthias and all the others and stuff. Also, they don't bring up his singing no more. That's completely gone now after last season. They don't even mention it, not even a little. And it turns out that Sheila has a little bit of a crush on him and stuff. And when it comes to Gideon, also Mr. Cranborn, it was a really cool moment when Mr. Cranborn heard some noise and he went up into the attic and he saw all the kids up there hanging out. Nobody said anything and they just stared at each other, and then he just quietly leaves and let them like continue doing what they're doing. That's what I always liked about Mr. Cranborn. He was always a whole much nicer than Matron and stuff. Sheila has reverted back to being a snitch. Also, she has blonde highlights in her hair. They keep trying to cover up, but her hair keeps drooping down over her face and it keeps revealing it. That is one thing that's odd about this show, because they will introduce another black character towards the end of this season. Well, actually, he's in it pretty much all the season. He just pops in and out. And he has kind of like an Afro Jerry Curl. I'm just kind of like, I'm pretty sure back in like the 1800s, they didn't have hair like that. I'm pretty sure her, Sheila and Vince didn't have blonde highlights in their hair. But anyway, she's back to being a snitch. She's back to being Hetty's nemesis. What's crazy is that there's really no real mention of what Sheila did at the end of season 2. There's only briefly brought up and everything. Sheila, after talking to the cook, realizes that the cook is going to need an assistant, and after she graduates, she'll get to stay at the Foundling Hospital and work in the kitchen. She's very happy about that, and she thinks she's going to rise up to the top and be like a nurse or a matron. But when she keeps making fun of Elizabeth and treating her like crap, Elizabeth tells her the cold hard truth. You're never going to be a nurse and you're never going to be a matron, because they will not allow it and stuff. And so at some point in time, people keep trying to tell her, do you really want to work here and work for the matron of all people? So she goes to matron. Now, the reason why she keeps snitching on Hetty and all of them and Harriet and everybody else is because she's trying to get in good with matron to get a better position there at the Foundling Hospital. But matron pretty much laughs in her face and is all like, girl, you're a foundling. You will never be a nurse and you will never be a matron. So this pisses her off the way she turns against Matron. During that whole time when the painting was stolen and like they blame Walter's father, remember I said Hetty took it and she hid it? Well, Sheila saw where she hid it, and Sheila did the most unthinkable thing. She took the painting and put it back in its rightful place, and that's how Walter's father got away and everything. And I'm just like, dude, she would have never done that in the past, but she realizes she just doesn't like Matron, and now she's just kind of like looking out for herself. And so towards the end of the first half, her and Hetty start to work together because now Sheila has no friends. And they bring down Matron. And so after that, like, the Calendars needed a maid. So before they took down Matron, Matron gave Sheila to them. So Sheila was all happy she's going to live in this rich, like, fancy family mansion and all this other stuff. But then Hetty comes along and that just kind of bums her out. So I love how they redeemed Sheila, but they didn't redeem her fully because she's still a little butthead with the facial expressions she makes. But she's no longer that evil person now. And like I said before, she has a little crush on Gideon. And so when she's there, it turns out that like there was only supposed to be one maid. So they gave Hetty Sheila's uniform and Sheila's bed and Sheila's room and Sheila's job. So she's a little pissed about that because she has to sleep in the kitchen on the floor. After that, she just becomes a pretty nice person and even helps Hetty out with the whole book thing. Now, in the book, her and Hetty do not work together. In fact, after they leave the Foundling Hospital, they don't see each other again. But Hetty found it in her heart to kind of miss Sheila just a little bit. Matthias and Harriet. Harriet has more to do than Matthias. When Hetty goes missing, Matthias wants to be all like, look, she's missing, she might be here and there, blah, blah, blah. And all the lads, and even Harriet, does not want him to snitch. They're like, look, we don't do that. We look out for each other. And Harriet's all like, if you snitch, oh, we're done. It's so dramatic. The way she says it is so dramatic. So anyways, he pretty much has no storyline, but when he finds out Harriet is now gonna go to America of all places because the family she's supposed to go with is heading to America, he's really sad. She keeps telling him that he loves her, but he never says it back. So they're gonna have a picnic, but then all the kids end up showing at the picnic. He finally does tell her that he loves her and stuff. He just didn't really know how to say it, and the lads help him write like a letter. Harriet pretty much is still friends with Hetty, and she keeps telling Hetty, don't do this and don't do that. But they actually have their very first argument, because when Harriet is going to go to America, she wants to go because of a good opportunity, but she's a little worried. And she kind of doesn't want to go. But then Hetty's all like, you know, this is a big opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And then Hetty keeps making everything about herself and Matron. And that pisses Harriet off because she's all like, you never listen to me. Like, you never hear my problems. It's always about you and Matron. So they have a huge blowout for like an episode and a half. Anyways, after the Matron gets busted, Hetty gives Matthias the Matron's, like, you know, America ticket. And so he meets up with Harriet and they get on a boat together to live their life because he wants to explore and see the world. It's a really nice, happy ending, and we won't get to see them until season 6 when something big happens. The Matron, she's a lot less scarier and evil this season, but she's more sneaky. See, the roof of the hospital is collapsing, so a lot of people are making donations and this and that, and she is stealing the money. She gets the idea of going to America when that American man wants her to come to be part of their hospital, but he no longer wants her, but she still has admirations to want to go to that of America. So she starts like stealing and collecting money. Her and Hetty, they stay out of each other's way for the most of the season towards the end. But then once her friend comes and, like, you know, talking about how like Jessie has ran away and she stole the book and you need to find the book, Hetty gets her hand on the book, but Matron ends up getting it back. And then she burns it right in front of Hetty, only to save the book. And I'm all just like, look, this book is going to incriminate you, send you off to prison. Wouldn't it have been best to burn it? But she's using it as leverage against her friend, who is shady and has a gang of kid pickpocketers, because she wants to boss him around and everything and get whatever she wants. So she makes him get her, like, you know, a ticket to like America. Throughout the season, we don't see her punish kids or screaming and shouting and yelling at kids or throwing them in the trench or anything like this season. They have completely washed that away of her. She's still mean and everything, but she's not as evil as before. But because Hetty's always snooping around and snooped around in her office and saw this and that, she realizes that Hetty is still going to look for that book and some other stuff and saw the ticket to like America and all this other crap. So when Hetty doesn't know where she's going to go when she's 14, which house she's going to go to, she goes to the Matron, but the Matron lies and is all like, oh, you're going to see your mother and everything. And she locks her in a room. And when she locks her in the room, the old Hetty Feather would have made like a lock pick, but this one just suffers on the ground until Sheila rescues her. and everything. Anyways, her and Sheila, and with the help of Judd, literally bust Matron as she's trying to lie her way out of it, but can't. So they lock her in her office, only for her to escape through the hidden door. After that, she's now living on the streets, and she's having her friend trying to, like, help her get that book. And not only that, but it turns out she knows Mrs. Calendar and everything, that they used to be friends back in the day. But it's not really revealed to what extent until next season. All we know is that she helped Mrs. Calendar get her husband and stuff like that. So she starts having that gang of pickpocketers like kidnap, look for the book and break into like the Calendar house and then kidnap that of Hetty. But they kidnapped the wrong girl. They took the daughter of the Calendars and stuff. After that, she tries to make an exchange, only for her to get busted by like that of like the police. And so then she's taken away, and Hetty has finally won. She has finally defeated her nemesis until season 6, which I've already explained in the Christmas episode, so I guess I might as well explain it here. Somehow she escapes prison, and she starts having her own gang of pickpocketers and everything. It's like, can't you just let her rot? This was an evil, evil, evil woman who was going to sell Hetty to like a paper mill factory. That's where she was going to put her instead of a house. And it's just kind of like, let her rot, man. And then what's worse is that Hetty forgave her of all things. Which brings us to Hetty Feather. Hetty Feather is just basically there this season. She doesn't really do much. Ida slipped a note to her in the first episode, and so she wants to meet up with Ida. So she sneaks out the Foundling Hospital and is out on the street for the first 2 episodes. And while there, some of the kids like Harriet knew, and Matthias all like, look, y'all don't know what the streets are like. It is dangerous. There's always bad people roaming around. So Hetty goes to the workhouse looking for Ida. That's where Ida is working now, the workhouse. And she can't find her because now she's like somewhere upstate and working in a fancy house. So Hetty is on the street begging for money and everything. And where she meets the pickpocketer of kids who try to rough her up, only for her to be saved by Sissy. Sissy is a girl who sells flowers and is from the books. She lets Hetty stay with her. She's a really headstrong girl who doesn't take no crap from nobody, and she even scares the gang of boys. And so Sissy has like a little sister and a drunken alcoholic father. Her sister is sick and needs medicine, but Hetty's gonna help her raise up money to get medicine for her sister, as she's gonna help Hetty get like a ticket upstate and everything. This is when Hetty's life is in danger, as the matron's friend is about to grab her until Mrs. Smith shows up and helps Hetty out. It's her big ally for the show, because this is a fancy rich woman who tries to do everything she can. She helps Blanche out. She helps Jessie out. She even helps Sissy out by giving her a card, but like, anything you need, you just come and get me and stuff. Now, the way they met in the book is different. A man was pursuing Hetty, and Hetty was riding on an elephant down the street because Hetty had joined the circus. Here, there's no such thing, because here now Hetty wants to be a writer and stuff. When she goes back to the Foundling Hospital, really nothing happens to her. She doesn't get punished because Miss Smith doesn't want her to get punished. So anyway, she knows Matron wants this book that she read with all the names and the money and all this other crap. She also knows Matron has like a ticket and like tons of money. But she doesn't really go tell like the adults. She just tries to handle things her own, but not really in the show. But like I said before, Matron gets busted and like all this other stuff. So when Gideon and Sheila are about to go off to the Calendar's house, she literally begs and pleads with Mrs. Calendar to like go with them and everything, because she doesn't want to stay there. She's all like, I'm not the best cook, but I'll do my best. And they have pity on her and bring her along. Now, in the book, she does not work for the calendars because the calendars do not exist. She works for a different family. Why did they change this for the show? Money. If you have a show based on a book and you have characters based on that book and their names are exactly what they are in the book, you have to pay the creator money. This is why Sheila's last name was changed for the show. So if they create a character that is similar to characters in the book but have a different name, then they don't have to pay them squat. This is what happened in Star Trek Voyager with the character of Tom Paris, who was introduced in Star Trek Next Generation, but they changed his name but gave him the same motivation. And it was the same actor playing him. And so it's like the whole Tom Paris Nick situation. And so while they're at the calendar house, which is a gorgeous house and everything, Hetty finds a new enemy. Mrs. Pennigan. She is the head maid there. She's not too mean, but she's very strict. Not as mean as Matron. But then Mrs. Pennigan leaves the next season, so we don't get to see her no more. So while there, Hetty is just being Hetty and everything. She's a little lazy, she's off doing her other stuff, and she worries about Matron because those gang of boys tried to break into the house. They later sneak in as delivery boys, and one flirts with Sheila, but they're unable to find the house, so they're gonna try to kidnap that of Hetty. But they got Emily Calendar instead. And so this is when Hetty's all like, no, we can't go to the police. We got to do this ourselves. We're 14 years old. So her, the tutor, and Gideon, they go to rescue that of Emily. And it's an easy rescue. Anybody could have done that. But then she gets caught, and there's an exchange for her in the book, and when Matron gets, like, you know, arrested and stuff. Now she's able to visit Ida anytime she, well, not really anytime she wants, because they have to work in servitude every day, and sometimes they'll get one day off a month or something like that. And, you know, her and Ida, they talk, and she talks about how she wants to be like a writer and this and that. And then the show ends how it ends in every season finale, with Hetty looking into the camera and smiling. A little spoiler alert, Ida sucks in the next season because Ida season 4 or 5 writes her a letter and tells her, Hetty, I can't be with you and I can't live with you. I found the man and I'm trying to marry him and all this other stuff. I'm just like, dude, you left your daughter for a man. But she did that because, I mean, she's a servant. So you know how it was back in those days. You literally had to be married to a man in order to have anything. Once that happens, she'll let Hetty live with her. But it's just kind of cold at how she did it. Now, in season 3, there's no mention of Jim or Eliza, or, like, you know, her Fount family and stuff. Like, there's no mention of them whatsoever, and we never get to see them. She wasn't even thinking about them this season. Now, as for Gideon and Hetty, even when they're at the calendar house at the end of the season, they're still barely, like, you know, interacting with each other. She interacts more with Sheila, of all people. And not only that, but in the books, her and Gideon don't work together in the house when they leave the Foundling Hospital. He goes off into the military, but because he couldn't cut it, he literally stabbed himself in the eye so he can go back home. And that's how Hetty finds him, with his eye missing and stuff. Very gruesome, and I'm glad they changed that for the television show. Because this was supposed to be a kid's book of all things, you know? But one thing about this season I really, really enjoyed was how everybody got to have their happy ending. Even Cranbourne and McAfee. Like, Cranbourne is now the head of the Foundling Hospital, and McAfee is going to be his #1 person handling, like, the kids and stuff and helping him along and everything. And he told her, you know, like, I'm gonna need your help, you know, because, you know, you're just that good of a nurse and everything. So that was nice to see, like, you know, everybody get, like, a happy ending. Even Sheila and, like, Elizabeth, who I was not expecting to have, like, a happy ending and everything. Even Blanche, of all people. Well, except for Judd, who has to stay there and can't be with Vance no more. And he's really upset about that. But other than that, everybody else got their happy ending. Now, as for the Green Book, Mrs. Calendar burnt it. Because it's so incriminating, it can also incriminate her and expose her past from where she used to work in the workhouse and live on the streets and all this other stuff. And of course, the matron and stuff. Like, I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. That was y'all one thing to get rid of Bottomley for, like, good, you know what I'm saying? But this is probably how she was able to escape prison, because without the evidence, all they have is her stealing money from the Foundling House and stuff. And I just couldn't believe she did that. The Calendar family is interesting and gets even more interesting in season 4. That what makes season 4 so good. Like, even though it sucks to leave our old characters, I'm glad they brought in, like, you know, new characters that are very interesting. Mrs. Calendar has a dark secret with her and the matron. Mr. Calendar is just a stern man. Emily is a girl who sneaks around and wants to be like a doctor, but her dad won't let her. Constance is just a gooberish little kid. And Edmund is a boy who's in a wheelchair, and his family does not want people to see him, so they keep him locked away in a room. And then there's Agnes, the maid. And, you know, things just get more and more interesting as the series goes into season 4. So, like, season 3, while not as thrilling as season 2 or dramatic, it still is very good, and I like it. And we get to see the matron get busted, which is something everybody wanted to see. They wanted to see the villain finally get taken down. And so, you know, this is a really good series, and it's still boggles my mind how Isabel Clifton has never won an award for, like, this show. And, like, you know, the Matthias dude did, but she didn't, and this is her show, and she always gives a good performance and stuff. And, you know, this season, or this series, is on that one network I told you, BYU TV. It's on DVD, but only in Europe. You know, they've never made a Hetty reboot. They make musicals and plays and stuff, but they've never made another television show or movie. I just wish there could have been more drama between her and, like, the matron, because that's what people always wanted to see. And some people are a little upset that they deviated away from source material, but they do try to keep some of the lore still intact, so that's a good thing. Happy Women's History Month, everybody. All right, well, I'll talk to you later. Bye.